Salutu, hello, this is Mark, and this is Several Books. So, the author print t-shirt today is George Bataille as a young man. I associate him with gray hair and being a little older, but this is him, I think, probably a few years older than me, in his 40s or something like that. Today I'm wearing a George Bataille shirt because we're doing Kathy Acker. And Kathy Acker is one of my favorite authors. If I seem a little tired, it's because I have made this video on Kathy Acker several times, and I've had to remake it for various reasons before actually getting the channel off the ground. So the way I keep a lot of my books on my bookshelves is roughly in publication order, and my bookshelves are vaguely set up like the Library of Congress. As I said, this is philosophy and theory back here. This is the beginning of U.S. shelf. And up here are some graphic novels, if you can see those. But down on the bottom I've got my Mark Twain and Henry James, up to Faulkner, and up here we're going up until Paul Bowles, John Cheever, Richard Yates, James Baldwin. Where you can't see things, I've got Philip K. Dick, Saul Bellow, William Gaddis, down to about David Foster Wallace. And then over there is my other part of the American shelf, and that gets more into very contemporary stuff since 2000 writers. Kathy Acker is on the shelf about right there. She was active from about 1970 to 1999. I don't know exactly when Portrait of the Black Tarantula, The Life of the Black Tarantula, according to the Black Tarantula, was published. But I believe that was her first published work. Now, her publication path was a little bit different, but what I'm going to show you here is my collection of Kathy Acker. This is 10 books. They would be in publication order for this if I hadn't made this video several times and figured out forget it. So what I'm going to do is go roughly through publication order through her books, and then I'm going to rank them. Right now the way they're set up is basically the way that I'm going to rank them, but give me a second. We'll do that, and here we are. Okay. So her first book that is not published or wasn't published during her lifetime, this came out after death, is Rip Off Red, Girl Detective, and The Burning Bombing of America. Kathy Acker is right there. As you can tell, she's a punk woman. I'm pretty sure she was a bleach blonde punk. And Rip Off Red, Girl Detective, and The Burning Bombing of America are two very different works. Rip Off Red, Girl Detective is supposed to be like a detective story. I wouldn't really describe it as one. A lot of her work touches on themes adjacent to pornography, getting in directly to pornography. This is a very explicitly pornographic work. There are lengthy descriptions of sex in the work, and like I said, there's not really much of a plot. It's my least favorite book by Kathy Acker. I think there's a good reason why she didn't get either of these works published. She didn't want to, I don't think. The Burning Bombing of America is basically a prose poem. It's kind of punk rock. There's not a whole lot else to say. It's very short. So now let's get more into what we associate with Kathy Acker. Now this is not in publication order. This is kind of, well, these books were published in a different order. The actual collection, this is a 3-work novel or collection. The work is called Portrait of an Eye, after Bataille's Story of the Eye. And the three works in here, the novels, are The Childlike Life of the Black Tarantula by the Black Tarantula, I Dreamt I Was a Nymphomaniac Imagining, and The Adult Life of Toulouse-Lautrec by Henry Toulouse-Lautrec. So, as you can tell, she is very in your face about her sexuality. She was definitely a second wave or pro-sex feminist, which I guess is beginning a third wave. I don't know feminism enough. I'm a dude. It's not important because the real thing about Kathy Acker is the punk rock. At least when you're coming at her from a man's perspective, like you don't think about a lot of the feminism stuff as such. But like I said, she's a punk rock goddess, man. She's all up in your face and tough as hell, and she'll write her sexy stories sometimes, most of the time. And I would equate her with somebody like William Burroughs or Thomas Pynchon. But Childlike Life of the Black Tarantula by the Black Tarantula is a work she assembled out of history books. And what she did, if my memory serves me correctly, is that she basically took sections out of history books, changed some things in those sections about women who were murderers, and made them into one character. I Dreamt I Was I Was a Nymphomaniac Imagining is another early work. These are publishable in terms of rip-off red. I don't think there would be any interest. This one has a lot of repetition in it. It would remind you probably of Watt by Samuel Beckett. So you've got paragraphs that she repeats, and sometimes there's just minor variations in paragraphs that are otherwise just lifted from a previous page. But for the most part, it is a standalone work. It doesn't really get in your face in terms of bothering you with the repetition, in my opinion. If you've seen that before or something like it, it's not too bad. The last thing is The Adult Life of Toulouse-Lautrec by Henry Toulouse-Lautrec. I don't remember the book very well. I don't think it really has anything to do with Toulouse-Lautrec. It does have some stuff to do with James Dean. But again, this is just a very postmodern work. You've got a lot of cut-up style. Things moved from different publications and so on. And yeah, it's just it's a solid work. Okay, the next collection, I believe these appeared after in publication order, true publication order. I don't know for certain if they appeared as, well, I know they appeared in this collection as like her fourth or fifth published work in terms of the works we're looking at now. If you're talking about just the actual publication order, it was a little different. But this includes Kathy Goes to Haiti, excuse me. My Death, My Life by Pier Paolo Pasolini, and Florida. Kathy Goes to Haiti is her only really conventional fiction narrative. A lot of her work I would feel more comfortable calling fictions than stories because it's chopped up stuff and essays mixed in and things like this. Kathy Goes to Haiti is a more conventional novel, a realist novel. There is a great deal of sex in the book. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's a pretty solid work overall. It's like a C+ showing if we're going to give it a grade. Kathy Acker disavowed it. All of her other work is experimental, more so. My Death, My Life by Pier Paolo Pasolini was next, I believe, and that was a more conventional Kathy Acker story or fiction. It has a lot of cut-up stuff in it. It's a little unusual. There are sections of the book that are in French, though, so I would be careful about reading that without access to either a French dictionary or a computer, if I'm remembering right. Last is Florida and Florida was a short story, so I don't actually really remember it at all. It's just very short. I know it's like 20 pages. So this is really made up primarily of Kathy Goes to Haiti and My Life, My Death, My Life by Pier Paolo Pasolini. So we'll keep that drop in there just because it's human. Now, when we're getting into the more conventional published stuff, well, not conventional published stuff, we're getting more into the big name individual works. The first one that comes up is Great Expectations, named after the Dickens book. If I remember right, there's not a character named Pip explicitly, but about the first half of the book has a character that's similar to a Pip. And he's like watching TV with his father, who is remembering either the Korean War or the Vietnam War. And there are sections of this book that are taken out of Pierre Guyotat's Eden, Eden, Eden. Eden, Eden, Eden has a bit of a cult following online. I read French very actively, so for me, Eden, Eden, Eden is a little different in the sense that I read it in French, but I read almost everything Guyotat wrote. So I consider him like a full artist, and he has different periods of writing. He has his books that are very sexual and violent, then he has these memoirs that are different. So the reason I'm bringing this up, though, is just that she takes a section out of Eden, 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 and she just intersperses that as the memories of the father in wartime. And it's pretty shocking. When she did that, Eden, 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 I believe, was still banned, according to the biography of her that I read. I read Chris Krause's biography. And she did the translations that appear in here. We're going through roughly publication order. I believe that Blood and Guts in High School was next. I'm not positive of that. It's publication order, not exactly, but you'll see. Blood and Guts in High School is essentially 3 separate narratives that are turned into one coherent story. They're all the same character. The character travels in Mexico to New York, from New York to Iran and Persia. And the characters change very rapidly in the novel. Now, what I mean by that is that her boyfriend appears in the first third of the book, and his name changes between boyfriend, brother, and father. And you don't know if he's physically changing, if it's the same person, and it's not entirely clear which of these relationships to her is correct. It's a very sexually charged relationship, and there's narrative of that. This book has a satire derived from Nathaniel Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter that I think is very well done in it. If you've read books by either Robert Coover, the novels of Barry Hannah, or certain other postmodern works where conventional stories are kind of retold, you would know basically what she's doing there. You would have seen that before. But otherwise, the book is aggressively experimental. She uses drawings a lot. I'm going to show you some maps also. I know a map, at least one, appears in here, but I have trouble finding it. But it's a very positive, it's a very experimental work. And so basically what I'm saying is that this is, I don't know, this is a very good work. It's very experimental. Maps. In a classical sense, it's surrealist, when the surrealists were writing, especially writers like Artaud, surrealism didn't just mean people get turned into bugs, like Kafka type stuff. It often meant extremeness of experience and the uncanny, things that shockingly resembled something else that you didn't expect. And that's not necessarily in the aggressive way of a guy turning into a bug. So this has to do with characters changing, for instance. Father, brother, boyfriend. At different times, these can all in certain ways resemble one another. So it's a strange experience. In a sense, it's surreal. It's just not what we think of often now today as surreal. Salvador Dali, for instance. I think the next book after that was Don Quixote. I love this book. It's probably more likely for me to be recommended than Blood and Guts in High School. This is like very much like a David Lynch movie. It has a cyclical structure, and there's like a talking dog in it. There's a long rant against the Republican Party in the United States in the 80s. But the book's plot is essentially that a woman is either going to Britain to get an abortion from the U.S. or coming from Britain and England or whatever, going to the U.S. to get an abortion. But characters change, age, die, come back to life, talking dog, and a political rant against conservatives in the United States. After that, I believe that Empire of the Senseless was next. Empire of the Senseless is a science fiction novel. It's very sexually charged. If you're coming at this thinking that your science fiction is going to be a Philip K. Dick or a Heinlein or something like that, you're going to be really thrown off. But there's some post-apocalyptic stuff. Paris and Algeria are having problems in the future, and other than that, it's a typical Kathy Acker work. This is not my favorite, but I've seen a lot of people who are enamored with this. So if you search online, or I've seen it referenced by a newspaper reporter in the past 10 years on a current events book that I read, and I thought that was kind of funny. It's a good novel. It's just I don't expect to see Kathy Acker referenced very often. She can be pretty extreme. After that, I believe it was In Memoriam to Identity. In Memoriam to Identity, that's Kathy Acker on the cover, is a more conventional novel, a more conventional narrative. The characters include an Arthur Rimbaud, somebody named Airplane, and somebody named Capital. I'm not sure if that's an allusion to Marx. I assume it is. There's an incest story. There's a stripper who's the main character, and there's just a bunch of other stuff. My opinion on the book is that it's a solid book, but we'll get to this on a book tier ranking. Now, I believe the last two books that she published were My Mother, Demonology. This is where it's definitely clear I got to be wearing a Bataille shirt, because the book is vaguely based on a relationship between Bataille and Colette Pignot, I think is her name. I've never heard of her. At first I thought she was the Colette. She's not the Colette, the writer of novels. But this book, in my opinion, is very autobiographical. It seems the way that she structures everything, it's clear that she's driving at her memories of going to a boarding school. It's either a boarding school, all girls, or just an all girls prep school. I can't remember, but you're getting a lot of stuff in here. One thing I loved about the book was there's a long reference to Wuthering Heights, and the way that she uses that and discusses the romantic relationship in Wuthering Heights is really something else. It's a very passionate, very charged section of the book, and I'm just a huge fan of that. It's kind of like Blood and Guts in High School's allusion to Scarlet Letter. The last book she published was Pussy King of the Pirates. This is probably one of her more accessible works. I'm going to talk about this. It's a high rating from me. There are maps in the book and some drawings, as with the other book. You've already seen a map I showed you, so I don't feel obligated to show another one. But basically, this is the story of lesbians and the pirates. Lesbians becoming pirates. And there's a prostitute, a house, a whorehouse, and it's a pretty radical story. It is using the cut-up methods. There are a lot of characters who seem like they could potentially be the same person but have a different name. And they are clearly taken from other sources. But other than that, great book, and I recommend it. I recommend everything by Kathy Acker except for Rip Off Red Girl Detective. But what I'm going to do now is we'll do the tier ranking list. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to set this up on the screen to make this work, but I'm going to show you my books, and then I might do that little conventional screen, or just a thing on the side that has where stuff goes. We're going to start out with the S tier. For my S tier, I have Pussy King of the Pirates, My Mother, Demonology, Don Quixote, and Blood and Guts in High School. These are her more accessible works, generally speaking. What appeals to me often about Kathy Acker is her use of other literary stories to drive narrative, and her retelling of those events can be very, very interesting. The appearance of Jean Genet in Blood and Guts in High School is a positive for me. The number of different languages in all those works, she's got Persian, French, so on, is interesting. And generally you don't need to know those other languages, just they appear in the book. So those are the S tier, those four. For kind of an A and B tier, my three books would be Great Expectations. Now, I don't actually think this is probably a B book. This is more like an A book. This is more like a C book for me. But Chris Kraus, the biography that I read, says it's her favorite, and I want to show deference. Memoriam to Identity, in my opinion, probably does belong in an A tier, definitely, and it's not because I want to show deference, but Larry McCaffrey, who is a postmodern American critic, includes this as one of his top 100 English language books of the century. I do not agree that this is her best work. I think this is a very good work. It belongs in like an A tier, but I don't think it's certainly not the first thing I think of when I think of Kathy Acker. The last in my A tier is going to be Empire of the Senseless. Empire of the Senseless, we've talked about it. Solid book. I like to see it referenced. Maybe for me more of a B tier, but I'm saying A tier because I have seen many people who I either respect or admire speak highly of it. Now, when we're talking about the B and C tier, I'm going to combine them for these two. These are the two earlier trilogies, or not trilogies, but 3 novel collections I talked about with her. And I think both of these are worth a read if you like Kathy Acker. I don't think it's necessary to put them off. If you've read a Kathy Acker work, you can dive right in. Pretty much any other Kathy Acker work, except for maybe In Memoriam to Identity, is going to show you the majority of what you're working with here. You're going to be like, oh, the cut up and this and that, and sections from other books and collage. But I wouldn't say these are books that you should go out and read as your first Kathy Acker. They're definitely worth reading. They're definitely entertaining. They're enlightening, interesting, shocking, all of these things that are good and fun and enjoyable. but they're not. They're not the best work to start with. There are so many other choices that I would tell you to start with. I could even ask you, what's your favorite and what do you like? Here are your options. The lowest rated book I would put in like an F tier. Rip-Off Red Girl Detective and Burning Binding of America were not published for a reason. I think the only reason why this book gets published is because the other ones are published. It's a bit shocking. If you're only going with shock value, there are things in here that will shock you. But other than that, I don't think there's a lot of stuff worth doing here. So that's Kathy Acker. Those are the books, and that's the rating scale. I'm going to treat this, like I said, as if nobody who's watching this has ever heard of Kathy Acker. Sorry for the jump cut, everyone. I had an issue with my camera. I'm still a bit new to YouTube, so I had lost a minute of footage there. Basically, what I'm saying, though, is that when I see Kathy Acker talked about, most of what I'm seeing tends to be around blood and guts in high school. I don't think that should be representative of her entire work. As I said, though, that's Kathy Acker. There's not a whole lot else to say. I want to thank everybody for their time, and please like and subscribe. That's how this works. Still a bit new to all this, but yeah, please like and subscribe. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.